Hey guys, how's it going? So it's actually Thursday evening right now, but I'm recording my Friday reads today because I think tomorrow I might not end up having all that much time because I'm having some friends over for dinner on Saturday evening and I'm gonna start preparing tomorrow, so I would like the time on Friday to just do that without also having to think about making sure I have time to record a Friday reads plus reading on top of that. So yeah, anyway, I thought I would just record it right now. It's like 8 p.m., 8:30 or something like that. I've had what felt like a pretty long week, even though not much has happened. Seems to be a common theme in grad school where it doesn't feel like much is happening on a weekly basis, and yet for some reason every week feels like it takes forever. So it's just a huge relief that tomorrow is Friday. And Friday is usually a short day for me in terms of how long I work. I usually try to get to campus between 7 and 8 a.m. Every day of the week, and I don't always succeed, but I try to. And I try to make each day like an 8-hour work day, so I stay till like 3 or 4, although sometimes I cheat and leave like an hour early, especially if I've been particularly efficient in getting work done. But because I on Wednesdays I have to stay an extra few hours because I have a lab from 4 to 6 p.m. So Wednesday is a long day, so therefore I get sort of a break on Friday, which turns into a short day. But again, I'm going to be spending much of that time preparing for having guests and reading and watching BookTube probably. So anyway, yeah, it is supposedly by the beginning of next week we're supposed to have above freezing temperatures, which sounds lovely. Honestly, at this point I look at 39 degrees Fahrenheit and it looks like it'll be balmy to me, honestly. I keep wanting to message Elena Makridina and just being like, how do you live like this over in Russia? But anyway, onto books, out of my life and into books. Of course, I guess I'm sort of torso deep in the Bhagavad Gita, the Mahabharata. I'm quite a ways into it. I'm now 550 pages into it. It's 863 pages long, although about 20 of the pages of the last page, the pages at the end, the last 20 pages, are an afterword, it's sort of an essay by a scholar, and I read that before I read the book, so technically I only have to get to page 843, not 863, so, but yeah, I am just loving it. It has such a gripping plot. It's crazy because this tells the story of a great, huge civil war between two factions of a family and the family are referred to as the Bharatas, hence the title Mahabharata, which I think means something like the Song of the Bharatas, or the Struggle of the Bharatas, or the Story of the Bharatas, and it tells of this civil war between two factions within this family, the Pandavas, who are the good guys, quote-unquote, to the extent there are any unambiguous good guys in the story, and the Kauravas, who are, the bad guys again. And what's crazy is that this book tells the story of that civil war between them, and that the war itself, the actual battles of the war, don't start until about halfway through the book. I only just started to get to that part. And yet this book is gripping from the beginning. It's just great. It has really strongly drawn characters, really compelling characters, some really moving scenes. I'm just loving it. And something I'm also finding really interesting is comparing it to Western epics, particularly the Iliad and the Odyssey, and looking at a lot of the similarities and differences, and also some parallels and sort of not so parallels to the Bible. There are definitely stories that are similar to stories we see in the West, in the Bible and in the Iliad and the Odyssey, but they sort of always have a bit of a twist. They're not quite the same, which you would expect in such a different culture, that even if they had some similar stories, that they would be, of course, different. So it's just really interesting to see the parallels and the non-parallels between them. And like for example, in this epic, unlike in the Iliad and the Odyssey, we actually have some really strong, prominent female characters who are, outspoken and intelligent. Well, Penelope in the Odyssey is intelligent, but she's not exactly outspoken or assertive. But we have assertive, outspoken, intelligent women in this story, at least one outspoken, intelligent woman, who, and also this one female character, actually takes several husbands, and there are women who take lovers in here as well. So, anyway, it's really interesting comparing this to epics in the West, but it's also, obviously, I'm just enjoying it on its own terms, as a story and as a philosophical work. There are a lot of philosophical issues that are dealt with in here. Anyway, I don't want to talk too much about this, because I'm gonna do a whole video about it, I think, because it's my Mammoth for March of the Mammoths, which I forgot to mention before I started talking about the Mahabharata. But anyway, this is my March of the Mammoths book, as is this next book I want to talk about, the Decameron. Now, I'm only like I guess ankle deep in the Decameron. I'm like 70 or 80 pages in, and I've just been taking it one story at a time, reading them occasionally. I'm not as enthusiastic about the Decameron so far. For anyone who doesn't know, it's a collection of stories out of 14th century Florence that really are just, they sort of range all over the place. There are comical stories of everyday people, but then there are stories of more elevated characters and more tragic stories. But I'm not liking this as much. I don't think my heart is really in it at this point. Yeah, I don't know. I did say that I wasn't holding myself to reading this, so I might not read it this month. I might not finish it. But if I want to read it at some point, I might consider just sort of taking it one story at a time and reading it really slowly over the course of the year, just picking it up every now and then, and reading another of the stories in it. Since none of the stories really connect with each other, there is sort of the framed narrative of these 10 people who are telling stories to each other to pass the time, sort of, and those are the stories that make up the Decameron. So there is that, but that's sort of loose, and I don't feel like it, at least so far my impression is that it doesn't, it's not something you have to pay too close attention to. So, yeah, I don't know, I might not finish the Decameron this month. And I'm considering possibly, if I don't decide not to read the Decameron, I'm considering possibly picking up a different Mammoth. I have a few other books that qualify as Mammoths, and I'm considering just picking up another one of those. But I don't know. I might not put that kind of pressure on myself, but we will see. It's okay. I can do what I please. Next, of course, I am participating in Steve Donahue's mandatory read-along of Pride and Prejudice. I am reading it in this gigantic hardcover bind-up of 4 of Jane Austen's novels. Yeah, I am at chapter 14, so I'm behind. I intend to be caught up by the time Steve does his video this upcoming Sunday. But yeah, I read this when I was in high school. I had to read it for an AP English class, and at the time I didn't like it. But I suspect that the reason I didn't like it was because I wanted to hate it at the time, because I think at the time I saw it as, quote-unquote girly. Yeah, I was a teenage boy, and so I think deep down I actually did like it. I just wanted to hate it and wanted to tell people that I hated it. But still, that sort of feeling had stuck with me until now, until I started reading it, because I'm really liking it. It's like I go and I read the Mahabharata, and it's gritty, and it's violent, and it's often dark and dramatic, and these elevated characters, and then I just come to Pride and Prejudice, and it's just just the most delightful chatter between everyday people. It's just comfort reading, it just puts me right at ease. And it's one of the few books that has been just putting a smile on my face on different pages, just because of how witty and funny the dialogue is, and even the characters who are kind of annoying in this book are drawn so charmingly that I can't help but like them, even though they're kind of irritating. Like Mrs. Bennet, Like, I think she's supposed to be a really annoying character, and I mean, not that I'm saying she's not annoying, but she's so funnily drawn that I can't help but just, you know, kind of enjoy her character. And that's true of all the characters in this book, and yeah, I'm just really enjoying it. So I'm really glad I jumped into this read-along. Well, I was required to jump into it, of course, because as Steve had to remind me on Instagram the other day, it is mandatory. So I assume you are all participating. So I hope you're all enjoying it as well. But yeah, so I'm really liking Jane Austen the second time around, and yeah, it's making me excited to just go on a big Jane Austen binge, perhaps this year, perhaps. We'll see. So yeah, Pride and Prejudice. Where am I going to put this book? Okay, and then finally, lastly, I picked up this copy of the New English Bible. I got this at the library sale that happened at the public library here last weekend. I did mention it in my bookcase tour video that there was a library sale, and I said I was considering going a second time because I had already gone by the time I recorded that video, and I did. And what they do on the second day of the library sale is rather than having you pay $1 per book, they just let you pay $1 admission. It's sort of an admission fee, and then you can just go in and everything is free. All the books, all the music that they had, all the records that they had, all of it was just free. So I went the second day and got this and a few other books that I'm not gonna do a haul right now, but yeah, and I got this because I was kind of looking for a translation of the Bible that was maybe a bit easier reading than the King James Bible, because I love the King James Bible. There are a few other, you know, works in the English language that match it in terms of just, you know, poetic beauty. I love it. And there are certain books in the Bible that I think I would never read in anything but the King James Version, like the Psalms. I don't think I would ever read the Psalms in this translation. I would just read them in the King James Version because, you know, they're just, you know, they are poems, and nothing matches the King James Version for just the poetry of the language. So when in a book like that, I need the King James Version. But right now, I have just finished today reading the Book of Joshua, which Michael McGrath, whose channel I will have a link to, he's doing his God and Godzilla read-along of the entirety of the Bible, and he also does talks on Godzilla movies to match each book of the Bible, which is an interesting idea, but anyway. And thus far in his read-along, I have been commenting on some of his videos, but I haven't been reading along yet. I have been commenting on sort of my past impressions of the books in the Bible that he's been talking about, because the first 5 books in the Bible, the Pentateuch, I've read that in its entirety twice, and the Book of Genesis I've read, like, I lost count. I probably read it like 5 or 6 times, because there were several times where I tried to start reading the Bible all the way through and would not get past Genesis, because I would get bored, or I would get into Exodus and read like the first third and then would get bored. So, and the rest of the Pentateuch is not easygoing. You know, the Book of Numbers, Book of Leviticus, and Deuteronomy are really just, for me, very dry law-giving, and I have a hard time stomaching the idea of reading them again. But sometime in the future, perhaps. But the Book of Joshua, the stage in the Bible, the section in the Bible from the Book of Joshua through the second Book of Kings is like one of my favorite pieces of literature ever. I just love the stories in that part of the Bible, and the Book of Joshua is one of my favorites, just for the absolute most frivolous reasons. I think I loved it more as a kid than I do now, because in the Book of Joshua, the Israelites move into the Promised Land, and they start to conquer it, and to settle it, they have to basically exterminate the inhabitants. And so you get a lot of points where the Israelites are, you know, committing genocide against nations within the Holy Land. And now, in my old age, I'm a bit more troubled by that than I was as a kid. As a kid, I really just liked battles and wars, but now I do see the sort of how troubling that is, I guess, yeah. But another thing I noticed on this reading of the Book of Joshua was something that's always fascinated me is that I remember learning somewhere, and I can't quite remember where, that Jesus, the name Jesus, actually is linguistically related to Joshua, to the name Joshua. And, Joshua is this very warlike leader of the Israelites into the Holy Land, and, that's basically his role, is to lead the Israelites to conquer the Holy Land. And that, to me, has always seemed so different from the way Jesus is in the Gospels. But this time around, I noticed some parallels between Jesus and Joshua. For example, I think Jesus is, he started out as sort of subordinate to John the Baptist before sort of supplanting him, becoming, rising above him, I suppose. And Joshua as well sort of started in the shadow of Moses and then obviously became the leader of the Israelites. So there's that, and there's also just this idea of leading the Israelites into the Promised Land. I mean, you could see Jesus as leading people into a sort of metaphorical Promised Land. And then there is the idea that, the historical Jesus, the quote-unquote real Jesus, probably was more of a militant revolutionary than he's portrayed in the Gospels. And certainly that, when he says something like, I do not come to bring, I forget what the exact quote is, I do not come to bring peace, but I come to bring the sword, or something like that. Jesus says that at one point. And that kind of language puts him much more in line with someone like Joshua. And, so I was just seeing a lot of parallels this time between Joshua and Jesus, and I thought that was very interesting. Another book that the Book of Joshua put me in mind of, specifically because of a read-along that's going on right now at Amy Gets Lit. I'll leave a link to her channel. She is doing a read-along of Blood Meridian by Cormac McCarthy, where she just delves really in-depth into Blood Meridian and analyzes every section of it. And I need to catch up on her videos on that, because I haven't been keeping up very well. Because I watched the first one and it was just great. But a lot of passages in the Book of Joshua remind me of Blood Meridian because of those what are essentially genocides that are taking place and the violence of the Israelites upon their invasion of Canaan. So yeah, anyway, this is just some observations. I'm going to move on to the Book of Judges tomorrow. Really looking forward to that. I love the story of Samson and Delilah. That might be my favorite story in the Old Testament. Yeah, anyway, that's a Friday Reads. That was a long Friday Reads, I apologize. Yeah, so I am gonna go, it's evening now, so I'm gonna go watch YouTube videos probably, relax. I will go to sleep pretty soon. And I will set this to upload tomorrow morning, so you will all see it then. I do feel a little bit weird about, scheduling videos to post like that. It feels slightly fake for me. I hope it doesn't come off like that. I don't mean it to, certainly. It's just, I like to have videos come up on consistent days of the week. I just like the idea of having, days of the week where I post, which is usually Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So I tend to do that, where I schedule videos that I've recorded a day or two in advance, or maybe even a week in advance. So yeah, anyway, I just wanted to be forthright about the fact that I do that. And I hope it doesn't bother anyone too much. But yeah, anyway, that's about all I have, and I will talk to you all later. Yeah, and obviously, I welcome any comments on any of the books I've mentioned, or just anything else. Tell me how you're doing and what you're reading, I suppose. Yeah, and how is March of the Mammoths going for everyone? I forgot to mention that. I haven't mentioned March of the Mammoths enough in this video. Anyway, yeah. So I'm gonna let you all go. I'm kind of rambling now. So anyway, I hope you all have a good Friday, and have a good weekend too. Bye, guys.